We're live. Hi, Hannah. Good to have you again. So today we're going to talk about looking after people's mental health. I'm just closing off here. Okay. Looking after people's mental health while working remotely. And it's a quite good topic for us to talk about at the moment, because I am personally going mad at certain times during my day. We've been locked at home with the COVID crisis, and every now and then, my kids come running at the house, and we're locked inside and we can't go outside, and sometimes I scream at them, and then I try to get my stuff together and recouple, and it's just been very hectic. And I guess it's a tendency for everybody, because everybody's been at home, and this is a very good topic for us to talk about, especially with our professor Häemer, which is a specialist in organizational psychology. And we can talk also about how it's working with the companies and with the teams, right? Because everybody's going through the same situation, and it's a very tough time for everybody. So Hannah, pass the word to you, and feel free to talk about the topic today.
So hello everybody, good to be with you here. And first I would like to share some general thoughts with you on working remotely. So working remotely did not start with the pandemic. However, the process of working remotely and introducing technology to our professional lives accelerated during the pandemic, because there was a public health demand to be accomplished, right? So during the pandemic here in Brazil, 46% of businesses adhered to working remotely. And there is a data from October that over 8 million people here in Brazil work remotely. If we compare this with other countries, then we'll see that in the US, it's about 16 million people that switched to working remotely. And when we are talking about working remotely, we need to think also mental health, right? Because there is demands that we have from working usually at our workplace, but then we are taking our work to home, and there is a switch off between where I am a wife, or where I am a mother. As Edson just said, the kids are coming in and they're screaming, and sometimes he's just going mad, right? So this is affecting our mental health, because the place where we work and the place where we live, the place where we relax, they are all mixed up, right? So when we are talking about mental health, I think it's important to highlight that it's not only dependent or exclusively dependent on the individual, because a lot of people, when they're thinking about mental health, they are thinking, well, this is because Edson is like that, or this is because Hannah is like that, right? But in psychology, we think, or we hold that vulnerability is not only individual, but it also depends on social factors and environmental factors. And those social factors, environmental factors, depend on our work relation, on our communication, on our workplace structure. So what I wanted you to invite to is that you would participate in a little brainstorming. I'm going to share with you a link and a code to log into it. Just a minute. I need to see where I can share it with you. Oh, okay. Right here. So please go to the Yes, www.mainty.com and use the code 8527061. Then you will have a question that is very personal, and there is no error or mistake to be done. So you can respond it, and it will just pop up in our shared screen. Let me share my screen so you can see it. Oh, I need to ask Edson or Andrew to activate, please, my possibility to share.
You're allowed to share screen now.
Okay.
Because I was the host.
Let me just see.
Oh, I just made you the host. There you go.
You should be able to see now a screen where it's written what have been the 3 biggest challenges for you in the adaptation to working remotely or while working remotely, right? So it should be possible for you to write at least 3 words, and then they should come up here and form a...
We should write only 1 word per box, right?
Yeah, it's 1 word for box. So we have family, attention, routine. Anyone else that wants to participate? This would be greater if there will be more people to put some keywords here.
People are shy today.
Yeah, people are shy today. But anyway, we have here family, attention, and routine. So I think there are already keywords that we can think about when we are talking about mental health, right? Because family comes up here once again. So it's bigger on the screen, right? Discipline, time, routine, attention. But family, as we are working home, will make part of the same space that we are sharing, right? So what is supposed to be the time that we are sharing with our family and that we are dedicating to our work, and how we can limit the spaces between family and work. As just to cite again Edson that said, well, then my kids are screaming, right? And I'm just going mad. It's like, well, at some point the kids are understanding that their dad is at home, and they're like, well, but Dad, you are at home, you should have time for me, right? So how can we limit that, and how it affects us when we are feeling as though we are sometimes not fully dedicated to either our work or our family, right? So this is also where comes in attention and routine, because how much are we putting or how much are we able to be attentive or to be concentrated when there are lots of demands that go beyond our work routine, right? And time and discipline are also connected to those various demands. How much time are we going to put in each of the demands? How much discipline do we have to stick to one or another demand, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can I get back to not share my screen? Let me see here.
I just made you the host, so you should have all the powers there.
All the powers. Okay. Yeah, I found it. So as we already talked about family, right? One of the things that we are studying a lot, or that we are highlighting a lot in psychology when thinking about mental health and home office, is the work-family balance or work-family conflict, which is just how much time we can dedicate to each of the demands that we have within work or within family, and how can we actually communicate to our family or to our managers, to our supervisors, to our colleagues, that we are now having a family time and not a work time, right? Because as we are doing everything online, we are like able to see our cell phone 24 hours, 7 days a week. And so we are also able to see our emails, and somehow this creates a demand for being available, right? Because there's those little checks that are blue, and so when they are blue, you saw the message, right? So you are supposed to answer it.
Yeah.
And this can bring up some stress within a worker, within a professional, right? Because until to what time I am supposed to answer a message? Is it okay if my supervisor is asking me to do something at 11 o'clock, 11:30 p.m.? Is it okay at 4 a.m.? Is it okay at 6 a.m.? Which are the hours that I need to be available, right? And when I can actually say, this is the limit, and now I'm like, now it's my time to relax, it's my time to do my family stuff, right? Another thing that I think we need to think about when we are working remotely is the exposure that we have to computer and to technology. There are some studies that indicate neurological effects. When you are more exposed to the computer, to blue light, then it can increase your stress and your anxiety levels. So what can we do within our companies to reduce the exposure to a minimum, or to not increase the exposure to computer and to cell phone? I think this is once again about limits of time when we are working or not working. There's a question about workplace structure, right? So the pandemics, they have made us hurry to come to accelerate the process of technology and working remotely. And people started to work remotely, but they didn't really have structure at home. So, well, some had structure and others didn't, and it depended a lot of on businesses to support people with structure or not. So me and lots of my colleagues, for example, we used our personal computer, we used our personal structure, and so in order to give class. But there are also examples of companies that have been bringing the company structure to the home of the people. So, for example, Coca-Cola has been bringing home the share, and so supported people ergonomically, right? So they would not develop how you say it, like a mental health problem issue because of your physical exposure on the share and to the computer, right?
Yeah. That's a good point, Hannah. One thing that happened when we were at the office was that every once in a while we'd have meetings, and when we had meetings, we'd leave the computer and have meetings looking at other people, not at the screen anymore.
Yeah.
Now we have meetings all day looking at the screen, and then we go back to work and we're looking at the screen. So we're looking at the screen all day. So that's a very good point. The exposure to the screen, it has been something that it's I don't know, the whole time of the day you're working, you're looking at the screen.
Yeah, it's like I think maybe, well, I'm thinking about me here, right? But I think maybe I'd be like 15 hours at least in one day looking at the screen because
Yes.
yeah, we're preparing stuff, we having reunions, we do have classes and so on, but that's actually a point, right? At the same time, that's really important that we have this communication, because the lack of communication tends to make people feel as though they are isolated and lonely and left out, right? At the same time, we're having reunions and meetings and video conferences. It's really exhausting to us as they are going on all day, right? So I don't know, thinking about your schedule, maybe you have like 3 meetings a day?
Yeah, probably 3 meetings a day. I have fewer meetings than I believe most people, because I've heard my wife is an example. She's working in the government, and she has meetings all day. And then the bosses are also complaining, where's your work? You gotta get your work done. But she's like, I'm at meetings all day, because it's also there's no cost anymore in having meetings. You don't have to go to a new location for a new office to go to the meeting with someone else from another department or another company. You simply turn on the computer and you can have meetings all the time. So people created a lot more than what they used to have before.
Yeah, and you don't need to provide a coffee break, right? So
exactly.
just a joke, but yeah, I get it, right? So you like, at the same time that you are like demanded to be in a meeting and to attend to the meeting, you also are demanded to do your work. And so what are you going to do? That once again, here is a question about limits, right? Which will be the time that I'm doing my meeting, which will be the time that I be dedicated to my work that I need to be doing, to hand in the work, right? So
Yes.
and I think this is where resilience comes in, which is like the capacity of somebody to bounce back when he or she encounters challenges that are inevitable. The challenge, for example, of time management, the challenge of work-life balance, the challenge of workplace structure, right? And when we are talking about resilience, especially in psychology, then we are talking about the balance of risk and protection factors. So individual conditions can be protection factors, and they can be also risk factors. Let's take, for example, people that tend to be workaholics. Workaholics in the sense of being dependent on work and having a personality of going beyond limits and working a lot and relaxing or sleeping less, right? Because as you are working more, you are only sleeping 3-4 hours, something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So this could be a risk factor for physical health and for mental health, because you're sleeping less, and this and sometimes this will affect you somehow at some point of time in your physical or mental health. But it also could be a protection factor when work is something that you are feeling fulfilled with. And when you're having autonomy within the work, and when you can be creative at any time at the day, I think a good example for that would be Google, right? Where people, if I'm not wrong, but where people can actually make their working hours as they have to give in their projects, right? They have to present the projects until some deadline. But if they do it at 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. because they're working from 2 to 6 a.m. in a better way, or they do it from 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. or something like that, it depends on the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Further, like beyond individual conditions, we have family conditions. How much we have a social relation within our family, within our social environment that can give us support. And I would go further than family conditions. We have social support within our workplace. Those are our colleagues, those are our supervisors, our managers, that are possible, that have possibilities to hear us out, that have possibilities to communicate, to be transparent within their communication, that show us or demonstrate us which would be goals, objectives to be achieved. But at the same time, the same factor can also be a risk factor. It is about the balance of these factors, right? If I have a lack of communication, if my communication isn't transparent, if I do not know how to communicate, which are the goals, where we are going during this pandemic, if I cannot, if I have not possibilities to talk to my colleagues or to talk to my subordinates and ask them if they're fine, how is life going, how is the pandemic within their family, then this could be actually a risk factor, because people are starting to feel as though they are not important.
Yeah.
We talked about this when we were talking about acknowledgement, right?
Yes.
So communication as a factor of acknowledgement.
That's a good point. Because when we're at the office and working normally, we have lunch. We do many activities that are outside of the actual scope of the work. So we have lunch and we call our colleagues to have lunch together. We take a break, get some water and see each other in the water fountain, or many activities that aren't work related, but we're in a context of work. And then we have the opportunities of giving that compliment, of asking how is your family doing, how was your weekend, and or anything that's not work related. And that's how you build the relationships at work, right?
Yeah.
And even like when we there is the possibility of interacting online, but it's not the same thing. And like what I noticed, that when you're doing a meeting, you don't have the possibility of doing side conversations in the meeting. It's only one at a time talking. In some respects, it helps with the productivity, but it doesn't help with the human interaction, right?
Yeah. I think, well, one recommendation for that to resolve that could be to have some time within the meeting to talk something more personal, something more social, and some point where you will actually approach what need to be approached, like what are going to be our approximate goals, what are we going to do until the end of the month, or what we are going to do until the end of the year, whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
I think one thing that I hadn't thought about, but I found some information about that actually people that were already used to working with the computer and used to using new technologies, they had a better time adapting to home office than people that had to adapt abruptly. So they would be more anxious about it, like not having the competences, have to adapt to something that's all new, and adaptations always will be like a little uncomfortable for us, right? So
Of course.
yeah, that's a sense of communication, the sense of adaptation, right? To go out of our comfort zones, but as it came with the pandemic in a very rapid way, that actually was leaving people more anxious, right? But especially the ones that weren't used to use new technologies, that weren't used to have some time working at home. So thinking about those factors, we also could think about how community, how teams, how our relation with our supervisors or with our subordinates may actually boost resilience. So what can we do to increase resilience, the protection factors, because we always will have risk factors. The risk factors are challenges in our lives, but which protection factors can we actually boost by our management, by the way that we are interacting with people? So I think one of the things that we already pointed out is communication, right? Communicating with people so they can feel connected, so they don't feel alone, so they can see what's actually the goal. Think about when are you going to communicate information that you need to communicate. If you give some communication that are partial, or if you wait to have all the information and then you're communicating. Because if you're giving partial information, sometimes you also will stress out people, right? Because you're like, well, I'm telling you that now, but then I give you more information in 1 month. Then people are like, yeah, okay, so what I am supposed to do with this information, right? So I think this is about effective communication. Another aspect may be autonomy, giving autonomy and to the worker, to the professionals, trusting their work as they develop it. Because as we adapted to working remotely in an abrupt way, many companies started to give a lot of documents to be more bureaucratic, to control what's actually happening. And this sense of controlling is like breaking the sense of trust. It's not something bad to you have a document, but the thing is the balance, right?
Yeah. Yes. Sometimes the manager has to understand what the other person is doing on the other side and have some way of doing it, but he also has to have in mind that that person is going through a hard time, and there's also psychological factors to consider about these types of controls, right? There's a cost benefit there that has to be measured.
Exactly. Like I think it's not a bad thing that you have some documents to control what's actually happening, because you don't see the work that the people are doing at home. As if you don't have any document, any kind of result that you can actually measure. But if you overdo it, then you give the sense to the people that they are not trustful, that they are to be controlled because they are bad people, right? So I think another aspect also to be considered, but it was a bit difficult to do this within the pandemic, is to think about which strategy are we following and communicate this strategy to people. Why I'm saying this was a little difficult during the pandemic, because there were a lot of decrees, there were a lot of government decisions that would be one day one thing, and another in 2-3 days they would be already outdone. So this is very difficult for people that are in management positions, and that this is very difficult in order to communicate any strategy that we would have to our staff, right? But if it's possible, it's important to communicate strategies, important to communicate goals, important to have a work plan, so that people can adapt in a more smooth way, right? But this is when you are thinking about working remotely and planning working remotely, right?
Exactly. And let me ask you a question, Hannah. Let's suppose I'm going crazy here. I can't handle this anymore. I can't. I don't have the means to go outside. I'm stuck at home, and I'm starting to feel that anxiety is taking over me. I'm starting to yell at a lot of people, and I can't get my work done. What should I do? What are the steps I can take to make this better?
Well, as an individual, I would say you would try to find some help, some psychological counseling, right? Because what we are doing within psychological counseling is seeing which are the factors that are driving you to those symptoms. So we would try to think about the factors and how you can actually change your relation to those factors. So, for example, you feel that you are exhausted and that you cannot do your work because you are like overwhelmed, or you have there is a lot of work accumulating. What can you do about that? Is it possible for you to put some limit, to say, well, from 6 to 8 in the morning is me time, and then I have some work to do, and then I have lunchtime, and then I have some work to do, but after 6 p.m., for example, until 9 p.m. as family time or something like that, so we would actually try to understand which are the factors that are provoking anxiety within you as an individual, right?
Yes.
But if we're thinking this in management, if we're thinking this within the workplace, then there are some strategies that we could use to support well-being and to be supportive and understanding with our colleagues.
There might be two situations there, right? One where I notice that my colleague is going through a hard time, and one that he is going through a hard time, but I have no idea that he's going through a hard time because he never expressed me that. And also, I can't see him on a day-to-day basis. I only see him in meetings. So there might be two situations, one known and one unknown, right?
Yeah.
And how do we handle that type of thing?
Yeah, so one recommendation that we can make to managers or to teams or to individuals is that we are contacting actually the people that are working with us, uh, asking them if they are if how they are doing, and showing them that we are available and accessible to be listening to them. And then we can also create opportunities to have communications among the team, among people that are members of a team, so that we can share some of the stuff that's going on in our personal lives. But some people will not feel free to share with everyone. So then you have to see which are people that are more trusting, um, which are the people that they are relating with more easygoing, right? So maybe I do not want to talk about my well-being or personal life with you. It's just being giving an example, right? But
Yes.
with this one friend, this one colleague that I really feel that that's getting me and that's going through something that's similar. So let's say you have your wife working, you working, and you have two kids. But there is another family which has the same structure: wife working, husband working, and two kids that are at home because schools haven't been getting back or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe those people, those two families will be more closely and more similar in understanding which are the challenges of each other than me that doesn't have kids. I can
Exactly.
understand that it is difficult for you, but still, I'm not in a place, you know what I'm
Yes, 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 exactly. If you have people with similar realities, then they can connect and understand each other's problems a lot more. And also, it might be a good opportunity to reestablish connections from times to times, right? Just give the person a call and understand how things are going, how they're doing, and get to know them in a deeper level, so that they can better understand how to deal with any type of situation.
Yeah. And I think this is another point. Sometimes people think that they are alone, feeling some problems or being challenged with some problem. Uh, just yesterday, a colleague told me or told us in a meeting. Oh, I think I'm the only one that has problem with those technical things. Uh, every time I'm like feeling as I'm screwing up, something like that, you know. And
Yes,
then she was like externalizing it, but there are actually a lot of other people that also have problems. So sometimes when we are raising awareness that people are not alone and that they can actually share, that they have possibilities to be listened to, they have availabilities, opportunities to share their knowledge or to be supported if they are not doing well physically or mentally, then this is also productive in the sense of increasing the possibility of perceiving uh, that people can talk to their supervisors, to their colleagues, right? Um, what
exactly.
I'm trying to say is like you can actually create a culture or a community feeling, a climate that people feel that they are secure interchange those kind of information. If I'm saying to my colleague, well, I'm anxious about X apps,
Whatever.
about whatever, so I feel safe to say that, or I feel that this colleague or my supervisor will judge me. So I
Yes.
think this is very important as well.
Yeah, and then there's a lot there about nonviolent communication and how people answer when if I'm the manager and you came up to me and you're saying, "Oh, I'm feeling anxious," and I'm like, "Oh, why do I care about your anxiety? Go work. I need to get this work done." Well, that's not a way to help the other person with anxiety. And then you also create a climate where people are afraid of talking with each other about how they're feeling. And that's maybe there may be a snowball effect there, right? Where in the short term, maybe if that day the person got the work done because he was really scared, but then he started getting burned out after a while because he couldn't deal with the pressure and he got even more anxious. And that's just in general not a very healthy environment to work at.
Yeah, exactly. So what you just pointed out, that it's being a snowball effect, is a great is a great aspect of how actually people are developing mental health, mental illnesses, right? This is not something that's punctual, but something that develops over time because of the perceptions that people have, right?
Perfect.
So people perceive that if they do not do their work, or they don't get the result within a certain deadline, then they might be insecure in their, just to give an example, insecure in their employment. So then there is a snowball effect on how you have to get your work done, and until you have to get to work, until which time you have to get your work done. And when you can actually say, hold on, now it's 8 p.m. and I would like to spend some time with my family, tomorrow I get back to it. But
Exactly.
the thing is, do you have this liberty to say that? So this is about how you relate to your leader, how to relate to your manager, and also about culture of organizations, right?
Exactly. Yes, they're very good. It's a great time to reflect about all these things and put it in practice even more, especially because we are not interacting directly with people on a day-to-day basis. Like, it's already important in the normal times to have a straight communication, to talk to people and not create a scare culture where people are just afraid of talking about how they're feeling. Well, now it's even more important. We can put it at an even higher priority for whatever work environment we're at, to always try to communicate with people and create a healthy environment for exchange of thoughts and also that are not necessarily work related. And that's actually going to increase productivity, right? That's a bit counterintuitive for some people to think that, well, I'm going to invest on human relations and it's actually going to be more productive than if I don't invest in human relations and just start doing work all the time.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. I was just thinking about something else. I think also the many challenges that people had during pandemic in adaptation led them to not connect so much with their colleagues, right? Mm-hmm. Like I have to get done this stuff, and I'm just like hang up with this. I'm just like I'm not getting done. I'm not getting to it. I'm failing at it, Yeah. And then, later on, I get to my colleague, and this has also been a snowball effect. So then people got to feel more lonely, more isolated. So I think what we should take home from this conversation, from this life, is that we are we need to communicate, and we need to keep up communication, especially when we are working remotely, because the communication, principally in relation to our mental health, to our social relations, to not work related aspects, topics, it's very important to boost resilience within individuals and teams.
Exactly. Oh, this brings us to the topic that's going to be about our in our next webinar. And just to tell a little story, next webinar is going to be about the best practices of management, right? And that's going to be with me. You have the opportunity to interact with me the same way that we did today with Hannah. And just a little story that Philip Kotler is one of the most famous consultants and management gurus in the past century. And he was once asked, what are the three most important things for people that are lacking in the company? And he says, communication is the first one, communication is the second, communication is the third. So communicating effectively is a very important skill and management practice that you should have anywhere in any work relationship. And that's one of the things that we should have in mind, and we talked about today, and is probably one of the best ways to keep our mental health, right, Hannah? Also,
for sure.
So go ahead, Andre.
I would like to say one thing. It's interesting thing. In a military area, the first thing the soldiers do in the battlefield, it's to establish a communication line, just to get the information about the field and report everything about the battle, even when the things are terrible. The first thing is to establish a communication field and be clear with the message. Even the third World War uh, was avoided because of better communication. One error in the system could stop the worst war of the world.
Exactly. So they're showing how communication is important, even in a war, especially in a war. So just to close here, does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, so just to close, schedule in your after watching us today, schedule now in your agendas next week on the 17th at the same time, 1 p.m. There's going to be another webinar, which is going to be with me, which I just said, management is best practices. And it's going to be also a good introduction of what our MBA is going to be all about. So I strongly recommend that you come and have a chance to speak with us again. And thank you very much, everybody, for joining our webinar today. And we'll see you next time. Thank you, Hannah, for being with us.
Great to be with you. Bye-bye.
Bye.